Behind that unmoving face, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking when Commander Ashford told me to leave my post. I was thinking about a pair of hands. Old hands, thin by then, with the knuckles swollen and the skin gone pale. Lord Chancellor Edric Vane had reached out and taken my wrist. Not my hand, my wrist, the way a man grips something he does not want to drop. And he had looked at me from his bed in the East Annex and said quietly that when his time came, he wanted me standing at the foot of the stairs in the Veldran State Hall. Not the honor guard, not the ceremonial detachment. Me. He had been specific about it. He said he had watched me stand post at the hall for 11 years and that there was no one he trusted more to see him through. That was 4 days before he died. So when Commander Ashford came across the marble floor on the night of the lying-in and told me the post assignments had been reshuffled, that I was to stand down and report to the northern vestibule, I did not move. I want to be honest about that moment. It was not defiance. A guardsman does not defy orders out of pride or feeling. What held me to that post was simpler and heavier than either of those things. I had been given a charge by the man who now lay behind those doors, his last coherent instruction. I had said yes, the way you say yes when you understand the weight of the word. And then he had died, and the weight had not gone anywhere. Commander Ashford was not an unreasonable man. I want to say that clearly. He had a ceremony to manage, 400 people expected by morning, and a staffing arrangement that had been planned for weeks. When he stopped in front of me and told me to stand down, he was doing his job. He said my name once, formally, and told me the order had come from the household office and that the northern vestibule needed a senior man. His voice was even. His expectation was that I would acknowledge and move. I did not move. He said my name again, and this time the evenness was thinner. I looked straight ahead, the way I had been trained to look. Eyes fixed on the middle distance, chin level, rifle at rest. The hall was lit low, candles in the iron sconces throwing long shadows across the stone floor. In the stillness between Ashford's words, I could hear the candle flames pulling in the draft from the corridor. He came a step closer. He said that if I did not comply, he would have me removed and noted for insubordination and that I could explain myself in the morning. I said, quietly, and only once. He asked me to stand here, sir. Ashford stopped. I kept my eyes forward. Lord Chancellor Vane, 4 nights ago, in the East Annex. He asked me by name to stand at the foot of these stairs for his lying-in. I told him I would. I intend to keep that. The hall was very quiet. One of the candles wavered and held. Ashford did not speak for a long moment. I could hear him breathing. I had no way of knowing what he would do next. I had told him the truth plainly without ornament. What happened after that was not in my hands. He asked me how I could verify what I had said. I told him I could not, except that I was telling him. Another silence, longer this time. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back down the corridor. His footsteps faded and did not come back. I do not know what he did with that information. I do not know who he spoke to or what he decided. I only know that no one else came to relieve me, and that I stood my post through the rest of that night. It was a long night. The kind that settles into your body, hour by hour, until the cold has worked its way through the wool and the silence has weight you can feel in your jaw. 4 hours. 5. The candles burned lower. Somewhere in the small hours, the draft from the corridor stopped and the flames went perfectly still, and the hall felt sealed from the rest of the world. I thought about Edric Vane, not the office. I thought about the man. 11 years I had stood post at that hall, and in all that time I could count on one hand the number of people who had ever looked at me the way he did. Not through me, not past me, at me. As though the discipline and the stillness were not a wall, but a kind of answer to something he respected. He was not a sentimental man. That was the thing people misunderstood about him. He was precise, and he was demanding, and he expected those around him to carry their weight without complaint. But he paid attention. He noticed things others walked past. The first year I was posted to the hall, he had come through on a cold morning after an overnight snowfall, and paused long enough to tell the duty officer that the overnight guard should be rotated more frequently in low temperatures, and that it was not acceptable for a man to stand in the cold for 4 hours without relief. He had not done it loudly. He had said it in passing, the way you note a fact. But he had noticed. That was the whole of it. He noticed. He had stopped once, years later, after a long state ceremony, and told me that the country was held together by people who showed up. He had not said it to make a point. He had said it the way you say something you have been thinking for a long time. I had not forgotten it. When the first gray light came through the high windows, I heard footsteps in the corridor, not the single set of an officer's boot. Many feet, moving together, careful and quiet. Commander Ashaford came through the door first. Behind him came 2 of the other senior guards from the night detachment. And behind them, In the half-dark of early morning came the household chamberlain and the secretary to the chancellor's office, and two members of the Veldran household staff who had served Lord Vane for longer than I had been posted there. They came in without speaking. They arranged themselves along the walls and the foot of the stairs, not as a formation, as a gathering. Ashford stopped beside me. He did not look at me directly. He looked at the doors. He said, low enough that only I could hear, "You should have told me the first time." I said, "I did, sir." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Yes, I suppose you did." That was all. They held the lying in that morning. The hall was full by 9. I stood my post through the ceremony, through the procession, through the final honors. When it was done and the hall had emptied, and only the candles and the stone and the silence remained, I stood there a moment longer than I needed to. Not because I was ordered to, because it felt correct. The household secretary came to me afterward, while I was walking the corridor to the changing room, and told me that Lord Vane had, in fact, left a written instruction in his personal correspondence. It had been in the East Annex the whole time, in a sealed envelope addressed to the household. It said what I had said it said. The secretary seemed to want me to know that, as though my word had been in doubt, and she was now restoring it. I thanked her and kept walking. There was nothing remarkable about what I had done. A man asked me to stand somewhere, and I stood there. He died, and I stood there anyway. Someone told me to leave, and I stayed. These are not complicated things. They are not especially heroic. They are only what you do when you have given your word and the man who received it is no longer alive to release you from it. That is the whole of it. I have been asked since whether I was afraid Ashford would have me removed. I was not. I was a little cold toward the end, and I was tired in the way you get tired after hours on your feet in a stone room. But I was not afraid. The post was where I was supposed to be. When you are where you are supposed to be, there is not much room for fear. Edric Vane believed that the country was held together by people who showed up. I do not know if he was right about that in any large sense. I only know he was right about the one thing I could test, which was the space at the foot of those stairs, on the night they carried him through. I showed up. That was all he asked of me and all I had to give, and it was enough.